would allow people to have one $10 piece of gold. My grandfather showed me one time, and so they had to turn it in. And then later, when I was a teenager, I used to could go to the bank, and you could get a silver dollar for $1. But by the time I was I guess it was around 1960, maybe 59 or 60, they finally stopped backing the dollar with silver, and simply had on there something like it was a federal note, basically just paper with a promise that it's good.
Well, how did you get into the Army with no education if you strictly
plowed? I went. That's a good question. I went 7 years, of course, in the country, and we were taught by a teacher, and then sometimes it would be just somebody that wasn't a teacher that would kind of look after us. And being kind of challenged or inquisitive, I've always tried to learn things. And so by 1955, I went to Huntsville, Alabama, and my brother was there recruiting a friend of mine named Bobby Kluwer, now deceased. We hitchhiked over there, and he tested us and then sent us to Nashville, and from there on out to San Diego. And so I was in the Navy for what was called a kiddie cruise. It was like you get out one day before you're 21 or something. And so after I got out of boot camp, they sent me to the commissary store in Millington, Tennessee, near Memphis, the Naval Air Station. So in there, I worked in not the beauty shop of all things. I worked in the meat cutting department, and then later they moved me into the office, and so I worked in there administratively while I was there, and then maybe a couple of years there, and they sent me to the USS Northampton, which was the only ship of its type. It was a light cruiser, CLC-1 was its number, had an extra deck and the world's largest radar up at the top, so it would rock from side to side in every other way. It was very rough riding. We were in the North Atlantic. I believe it was the Second Fleet, and we had an admiral on board with a Marine detachment, of course. On the tail end of it, we could accommodate a helicopter, and so I stayed on there until I got out. I believe it was one day before I was 21. When I came back to Dalton, I worked in a supermarket for a little bit and with a plumbing company some. And so I went to school on the GI Bill at Dalton High at night. And I'll try not to make this too long for you, Teresa. But anyway, they tested me, and I placed in the 11th grade. So they let me just jump because I could do the work. And I stayed in that. I didn't go for the 12th grade. I decided I'd go. I was working at a carpet mill, and I didn't really like what I was doing. And I thought, well, I'll just go back in the Navy, I think. And I went up to Chattanooga and took a GED and passed that. So when I went in back in the Navy that time, I had a GED as education. So I taught myself, like I said, being a storekeeper striker, I taught myself how to type and had to read up real fast and take a bunch of correspondence courses. And that's what kicked me off. That set me off in the Navy. And so from there I served in, like I've told you before, in Omaha, Nebraska, first on the Saratoga, then to Jackson, Tennessee, Jackson, Mississippi, Omaha, Nebraska, then on down to New Orleans, and that's where I retired from in 1976.
How many years did you get to serve?
About a 20-year retirement, as far as with extra, what do you call it? With your credited time and whatnot. So I got out. I was in trouble seriously with pinched nerve and back troubles, and so I got out because my nervous system was being affected and whatnot. And I went ahead and got out. Couldn't stay any longer because I was having trouble sleeping and stuff like that. So, but anyway, that took care of that.
But you put in 20 years? You actually put 20 years in the U.S. Navy?
Yeah, I did.
You're retired?
Pardon?
What level? You went into, so you go into boot camp and you're E1, and you're lucky if you get an A school, at least when I went through in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And then, like I told you, I was a corpsman HM3, but I had kids, and I came back in as a 4x10 on 4/29/85. And then I had a leap year every 4 years. They said they could charge me 36 years, 4/8, 32. I guess 32-year contract. But my A school was corpsman, but I served in IS and security. They sent me to Millington, from Balboa to Millington, like you did.
Yeah,
I went to Chattanooga too. I went to Chattanooga.
How about that?
I went exactly. Yeah, I went Balboa, Millington, Chattanooga, then back to Dallas, Fort Worth. But I went back to Houston. So you're a let's see. I went HM3, then 4, 5, and they wouldn't give me. I made it up to first class, but the second time. But they said because my nurse that was in Hawaii, her daddy was in the CIA, was one of the CIA guys, but I was in intelligence at Great Lakes, so working in the IS. So crossed over because I was in law enforcement, criminal justice, not corpsman, and she was real strict. She was a nurse. They wouldn't make me a first class because I wouldn't be a nurse. So that's my part of it. What happened to you? So what were you called? A mechanic, a bosun's mate?
No, coming out of boot camp, I was like a seaman, recruit while I was there, and I had two straps. And then when I got to Memphis, I took the firearms training and first aid training and whatnot. And as time went on, I made seaman first class.
Seaman.
And a free stripe, so that was seaman. And then when they transferred from there to the Northampton, I was assigned to the supply office there, and I made third class petty officer there. And that's what I was when I got out and went to the later into Dalton and school. When I came back home, I was a third class coming off that. And so when I went back into the Navy, let's see along the lines, it's been a long time. But anyway, I made, on the Saratoga, I made second class petty officer there. And then later, when I got in the Navy Reserve Training Program at Jackson, Tennessee, I made first class petty officer there. And then later, when I arrived at Omaha, I got the chief's E7 promotion, and so I was a storekeeper. It involved supply and clothing, food and accounting, and a whole bunch of things, logistics, and that's what it was called in those days. And so
I've been in the ship. I think I've been on the Saratoga. Is that what you said?
Pardon me?
What ship were you on? What did you say?
The first one was the Northampton, CLC-1.
I haven't been on that one. What was the other?
It was the USS Saratoga.
I think I've been on the Saratoga, unless it's been. Why do I know that so well? Let me look it up.
Well,
it's not retired.
It was home ported at Mayport, Florida, so you may have been on that ship.
Let me see. Well, what I'm trying to remember is what came into when I was running over at SinkPack Fleet, USS Saratoga. Now, I know I was on a lot of the flat aircraft carriers,
Yes.
So you were assigned to the Saratoga. That's a big deal. You made second class there?
Yeah,
I made second.
Yeah, I did, and my assignments there was I worked in the commissary office and in the regular storekeeping, and then from there into the supply department office, where the supply officer and his assistant functioned over 6 different supply divisions. So I ran the office there, you know. Pardon
Are you telling me you were the supply officer on the Saratoga?
No, I worked for the supply officer.
Okay, because I think it came over. I'm thinking it came over to Pearl Harbor while I was there. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure.
No, I don't think
it was laid down. That was laid down in '52, so it wasn't that one, was it?
No, it wouldn't have been the Sarah. Sarah operated in the Mediterranean when it was away from Mayport.
I'll have to go see.
When I was on it, I left it in 1964.
I wonder why I know the name so well. Has it been in movies or something?
Yeah, probably so. I think the original Saratoga back there had some action in World War II, if I'm remembering right.
Let's see. Her first trip to the Norwegian Sea. NATO exercises, Mediterranean, you're right, from 59 to 67. So she was in a 6-day war, broke out, and 68 was sent to Philadelphia to modernize it and overhaul it. So by 69, she was back in the Mediterranean, okay? And then 72, back to the Pacific Fleet to Vietnam War efforts. So the ship's aircraft, they had a crew of hundreds of missions. So this is good intel. This is good history. Back to the Mediterranean. Now, it says it was one of 2 aircraft carriers, but that was a big deal to get assigned to a carrier.
It was a Forrestal class carrier. And I remember when the Russian-Cuban crisis was underway, and I remember seeing all the equipment and whatnot that was being brought in onto the ship at the Mayport. But as you know, we didn't have to go to war that time, and but they were bringing a lot of supplies and vehicles and everything. I remember looking down on the flight deck and seeing all of that.
Crisis. Were you on there in '62?
Yeah, yes, I was.
Oh my God!
Did you actually go out to sea?
I'm sorry?
Did you actually go out to sea on the Saratoga?
Yeah. When I went, like I say, when I finished my GED and went back in the Navy, I asked for to be assigned, to like an aircraft carrier.
Oh, okay.
And so I was on there 4 years.
Wow.
I had one little school they sent me to up in Norfolk while we're talking about the ship, and one of my collateral duties was the backup storekeeper for nuclear weapons at that time, and I never had to work at it, but I did go to the school and served as backup, but they never called on me the whole time I was there to do anything.
But you got your nuclear clearance, I bet.
Yeah.
Top secret?
I had probably top secret, I guess.
Well, if you did nuclear, but I don't know back then. I guess they called it that during the Missile Crisis. It wasn't that long ago. That was during Kennedy, the Cuban Missile Blockade, and it served in the Cuban Missile Blockade. So in '62. So you were on it during that time.
Yeah, 60 to 64 is when I was on there.
Wow, yeah.
We
so
made 2,
here's your...
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Teresa.
I was going to tell you, it says October 61. Okay, now it has the Guantanamo Bay, July 61. Were you on 60 to 64?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I was there, yeah.
So it was in the Mediterranean in August 60. And then July, Guantanamo Bay, October 61, Cuban Missile Blockade, and then 61, 62, Mediterranean